Two white canes, two instruments, two sisters who had never seen each other's faces but knew each other's souls better than anyone in the world. When 14-year-old twins Maya and Zara Hassan walked onto the America's Got Talent stage, Simon Cowell thought he was about to witness another inspirational story. He was wrong. What happened next wasn't just inspirational, it was transcendent, and it would force him to break every rule he'd ever followed as a judge. The moment their music began, the entire Dolby Theater disappeared. The audience, the cameras, the bright lights, everything faded away except for the pure magic flowing from a piano and violin. But it wasn't just their music that stopped the show. It was what Simon did when he realized he was witnessing something that happened maybe once in a lifetime. He stood up, walked to the judges' table, and did something that had never been done in AGT history, something that would change everything. Let me take you back to the moments before Maya and Zara Hassan rewrote the rules of what's possible. It was Friday evening at the Dolby Theater in Los Angeles, and the America's Got Talent semifinals were in full swing. The energy was electric as always, with 3,400 audience members packed into the iconic venue. Simon Cowell sat at the judges' table in his usual position, that familiar expression of skeptical attention on his face. Next to him, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel were reviewing their notes from the previous acts. The night had been filled with the usual mix of AGT magic. A comedian had earned a standing ovation, a dance crew had brought the house down, and a singer had moved the audience to tears. Terry Crews was maintaining his infectious energy as host, keeping the momentum building toward the evening's final acts. But backstage, something special was about to unfold. Maya and Zara Hassan stood in the wings, their white canes folded and tucked under their arms, holding hands as they had since they were toddlers. At 14 years old, they had never seen each other's faces, never seen a sunset, never seen the stage they were about to walk onto. Born 3 minutes apart with a rare genetic condition that left them both completely blind, they had navigated their entire world through sound, touch, and an almost telepathic connection that amazed everyone who met them. Their mother, Fatima Hassan, watched from the family waiting area, her hands clasped tightly in prayer. A single mother who had immigrated from Lebanon 12 years ago, she had worked 3 jobs to support her daughters and pay for their music lessons. Cleaning offices at night, working at a grocery store during the day, and doing alterations on weekends, all so Maya and Zara could pursue the gift that had revealed itself when they were barely 4 years old. "Mama," Maya had said one day, sitting at their neighbor's old upright piano, "the music talks to me." "Me too," Zara had whispered, picking up a child-sized violin for the first time. "It tells me stories." From that moment, music became their language, their sight, their everything. While other children learned to navigate the world with their eyes, Maya and Zara learned to navigate it with melodies, harmonies, and rhythms that seemed to flow through their very souls. "Girls, you're on in 30 seconds, called Marcus, one of the production assistants, his voice gentle but efficient. He had worked with the twins during rehearsals and had been amazed by their preparation process. They memorized not just their music, but the exact number of steps, from the wing to their positions, the height of the piano bench, the acoustics of the room. Maya adjusted her white dress, identical to her sister's, and felt for Zara's hand. "You ready?" she whispered. "Always when I'm with you," Zara replied, her violin case strap secure across her shoulder. Together, they had chosen to perform their own arrangement of Beethoven's Ode to Joy, but not the traditional version. They had spent months creating a modern interpretation that blended classical sophistication with contemporary emotion, Maya's piano providing the foundation, while Zara's violin soared above it like a voice singing directly to the heart. Terry Crews' voice boomed across the theater. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Maya and Zara Hassan." The curtain rose, and the twins began their journey onto the stage. The audience fell silent as they watched the girls navigate the stage with their white canes, moving with careful precision but absolute confidence. Maya's cane swept gently from side to side as she counted her steps, while Zara stayed close beside her, their free hands never losing contact. Simon leaned forward slightly, his expression shifting from routine interest to genuine curiosity. There was something about the way the girls moved together, something that suggested a connection deeper than anything he'd seen in 20 years of judging talent shows. "Good evening, girls," Terry said warmly as they reached center stage. "Tell us your names." "I'm Maya Hassan," said the girl on the left, her voice clear and strong. "And I'm Zara Hassan," added her sister. "We're twins." "And where are you from?" "Los Angeles," Maya replied. "We've lived here since we were 2 years old." "And what are you going to do for us tonight?" The twins exchanged a look that somehow transcended their blindness, a moment of communication that seemed to happen on a level beyond the physical. "We're going to play music," Zara said simply. "I play violin, and Maya plays piano. And we want to show everyone," Maya continued, "that music is a language everyone can understand, whether you can see it or not." Simon found himself studying the girls more intently. There was something about their composure, their quiet confidence, that set them apart from typical teenage contestants. They weren't performing their disability. They were simply present, authentic, ready to share their gift. "All right, girls," Terry said, stepping back. "The stage is yours." Maya navigated to the grand piano position stage left, her cane helping her locate the bench. She set it aside and sat down, her fingers finding the keys with the familiarity of someone who had spent thousands of hours at similar instruments. Zara positioned herself slightly to the right, opening her violin case and removing an instrument that, even from a distance, was clearly well-loved and perfectly maintained. The stage lights dimmed, leaving the twins in a pool of warm golden light. For a moment, the Dolby Theater was completely silent, 300-400 people holding their breath, waiting to see what these two blind teenagers would create. Maya's fingers found the opening notes. The first chord that rang out from the piano was so pure, so perfectly pitched, that it seemed to resonate not just through the theater, but through the very souls of everyone listening. It wasn't just a note. It was an invitation, a gentle hand reaching out to guide listeners into a world where sight was irrelevant and only feeling mattered. Zara raised her violin, and when her bow touched the strings, something magical happened. The melody that emerged wasn't just Beethoven's Ode to Joy. It was joy itself, given voice and form. But this wasn't the grand, triumphant version most people knew. This was intimate, personal, as if the twins were sharing a secret that only they understood. Simon's expression began to change. He had heard Beethoven performed countless times by orchestras and soloists, by professionals and amateurs, but he had never heard it like this. There was something in the way Maya and Zara played together that transcended technical skill or musical training. They weren't just playing the same piece. They were breathing the same breath, feeling the same heartbeat, sharing one musical soul between two bodies. As the piece continued, Maya's piano began to venture into more modern territory, adding jazz harmonies and contemporary rhythms that shouldn't have worked with Beethoven, but somehow created something entirely new and beautiful. Zara's violin followed, not as an accompanist, but as a true partner, weaving melodies that seemed to dance around the piano like light itself. The audience was mesmerized. People who had come expecting entertainment found themselves witnessing something approaching the sacred. In the front row, a woman wiped tears from her eyes. Behind her, a man closed his eyes and swayed gently to the music. Throughout the theater, phones that had been ready to record were slowly lowered as people realized that some moments were meant to be experienced, not captured. But it was at the judges' table that the most remarkable transformation was taking place. Sofia Vergara had stopped taking notes and was staring at the twins with wonder. Heidi Klum had brought her hands to her heart, her eyes glistening with tears. Howie Mandel, who had built his career on quick wit and rapid-fire commentary, sat in complete stillness, clearly overwhelmed by what he was hearing. and Simon Cowell, the man who had made his reputation on sharp critiques and impossible standards, was experiencing something he couldn't name. As the twins continued their performance, moving through variations and interpretations that showcased not just their individual talents, but their extraordinary connection, Simon began to understand that he wasn't just hearing music, he was witnessing communication in its purest form. Maya and Zara couldn't see each other, couldn't rely on visual cues or facial expressions, yet they were creating something together that was more unified, more synchronized than most performers who could see perfectly. The piece built to a crescendo that was both powerful and gentle, Maya's piano providing a foundation that seemed to support not just Zara's violin, but the emotional weight of everyone in the theater. Zara's melody soared above it all, reaching notes that seemed to touch something beyond the physical world. And then, in a moment that would be remembered by everyone in that theater for the rest of their lives, something extraordinary happened. As Maya played a particularly complex passage, her fingers flying across the keys with impossible precision, she began to smile. Not the nervous smile of a contestant hoping for approval, but the radiant smile of someone lost in pure joy. And as if connected by invisible threads, Zara began to smile too, her violin singing with a sweetness that seemed to fill every corner of the massive theater. They couldn't see each other, but somehow they were seeing something together, the music itself, made visible through their shared experience of creating it. Simon found himself standing up without conscious decision. It wasn't a planned movement, wasn't a calculated gesture for the cameras. He simply couldn't remain seated while witnessing something this profound. The other judges noticed his movement, but their attention remained focused on the twins, who were now approaching the final section of their arrangement. Maya's piano had become more percussive, more rhythmic, while Zara's violin had taken on an almost vocal quality, as if she were singing wordlessly through her instrument. As the piece reached its conclusion, Maya and Zara began to slow together, their music becoming softer, more intimate, drawing the audience into a moment of perfect silence. The final note, a single pure tone from Zara's violin, supported by a gentle chord from Maya's piano, hung in the air like a prayer. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full, full of emotion, full of recognition, full of the kind of awe that comes when human beings witness something that reminds them what's possible. Then the Dolby Theater exploded. 3,400 people rose to their feet simultaneously. But this wasn't typical applause. This was the sound of people who had just experienced something that changed them. The ovation rolled through the theater like a wave, building and building until it seemed like the very walls might shake. Maya and Zara, still at their instruments, turned toward each other and smiled. They couldn't see the standing ovation, couldn't see the tears on faces throughout the audience, couldn't see Simon Cowell standing at the judges' table with an expression of complete wonder. But they could feel it, the energy, the love, the recognition of something extraordinary. The applause continued for what felt like minutes, but Simon barely heard it. He was staring at the twins, processing what he had just witnessed, trying to find words for something that seemed to exist beyond language. Finally, as the applause began to die down, Simon pressed the button that activated his microphone. His voice, when it came, was quieter than usual, more contemplative. "Maya, Zara," he said, and the theater fell silent again. "In 20 years of judging talent, I have heard every kind of performance imaginable. Classical, contemporary, experimental, traditional. I thought I had heard everything." He paused, seeming to struggle with his words. "What you just did wasn't just a performance. It was a revelation. You took one of the most famous pieces of classical music ever written and made it completely your own, while somehow making it more itself than it's ever been." Maya and Zara listened intently, their hands finding each other across the space between piano and violin. "But more than that," Simon continued, his voice gaining strength, "you just proved something that I think we all needed to be reminded of. You proved that the most powerful communication doesn't happen through the eyes. It happens through the heart, through the soul, through the kind of connection that you two share." The audience began to murmur with approval, sensing that something special was happening in Simon's response. You couldn't see the audience, but you reached every single person in this theater. You couldn't see each other, but you played with a unity that most performers with perfect sight never achieve. You couldn't see your instruments, but you made them sing with a clarity that was absolutely breathtaking. Simon took a breath, and what he said next surprised everyone, including himself. I need to ask my fellow judges something, and I need them to be honest with me. Sophia, Heidi, Howie, have you ever experienced anything like what we just witnessed? Sophia was the first to respond, her voice thick with emotion. Never. That was beyond performance. That was pure art. I agree completely, Heidi added. I've seen thousands of acts, but this felt different. This felt sacred. Howie, typically the most talkative of the judges, simply shook his head in amazement. I don't have words, he said. I just don't have words. Simon nodded, then turned back to Maya and Zara. Here's the thing, girls. AGT has rules, procedures, protocols. We're supposed to deliberate, discuss, analyze. We're supposed to follow a format that's been successful for years. He paused, and everyone in the theater sensed that something unprecedented was about to happen. But some moments are bigger than rules. Some performances transcend procedure, and what you just shared with us falls into that category. Simon began walking toward the golden buzzer, but then he stopped. A look of realization crossed his face, and he turned to face his fellow judges. Actually, I need to do something that's never been done in AGT history. I need to consult with my fellow judges, not about whether you deserve to advance, but about something much more important. He looked at Sophia, Heidi, and Howie. What you just witnessed, that level of artistry, that depth of connection, that pure talent, doesn't that deserve recognition beyond our normal procedures? Sophia immediately understood what Simon was suggesting. You want to give them something more than the golden buzzer. I want to give them something that matches what they just gave us, Simon replied. Without another word, Sophia stood up from her chair and walked to her golden buzzer. Heidi and Howie immediately followed, understanding instinctively what was happening. For the first time in America's Got Talent history, all four judges positioned themselves at their golden buzzers simultaneously. Maya and Zara, still holding hands, sensed the energy in the room changing but couldn't understand what was happening. Maya and Zara Hassan, Simon announced, his voice carrying across the theater with unprecedented authority. You didn't just earn a golden buzzer tonight, you earned something that's never been given before. He looked at his fellow judges, who nodded in unanimous agreement. You earned recognition from all four judges that what we just witnessed wasn't just talent, it was transcendence, it was proof that the most beautiful art comes from the deepest places of the human spirit. Simon raised his hand above his golden buzzer. Sophia, Heidi, and Howie did the same. Maya and Zara Hassan welcome to the finals of America's Got Talent with the first ever unanimous golden buzzer in the show's history. All four judges slammed their buzzers simultaneously. The explosion of golden confetti that followed was unlike anything the Dolby Theater had ever seen. 4 separate confetti cannons fired at once, creating a golden blizzard that covered the entire stage. The audience erupted in the loudest, longest ovation in AGT history. But through all the chaos, the cameras captured the moment that would become the most replayed clip in the show's history. Maya and Zara, standing in the center of the stage, surrounded by falling gold, reaching for each other and embracing as tears of joy streamed down their faces. They couldn't see the confetti, couldn't see the standing ovation, couldn't see the 4 judges who had just broken every rule to honor their performance. But they could feel it all, the love, the recognition, the understanding that their music had touched something universal and profound. Terry Crews ran onto the stage, tears in his own eyes, and embraced both girls. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced to the continuing ovation, Maya and Zara Hassan, the first contestants in AGT history to receive the unanimous golden buzzer. But perhaps the most meaningful moment came when the confetti settled and the applause finally died down. Simon walked onto the stage and approached the twins, who were still holding each other, still processing the magnitude of what had just happened. "Maya, Zara," he said quietly, "can I tell you something?" They nodded, turning toward his voice. "I've been in the music industry for over 30 years. I've worked with some of the most successful artists in the world. I've heard performances in every venue from small clubs to major arenas. But what you just did, the connection you shared, the music you created together, that's the purest expression of what music is supposed to be." He paused, his voice becoming even more personal. "You reminded me tonight why I fell in love with music in the first place. Not because of chart positions or album sales or industry recognition, but because of moments like this. Moments when music becomes a bridge between souls, when it becomes a language that everyone can understand regardless of what they can or cannot see." Maya wiped tears from her eyes. "Mr. Cowell, we just wanted to share our music." "And you shared so much more than that," Simon replied. "You shared hope. You shared proof that the most powerful vision comes from the heart, not the eyes. You shared a reminder that the most beautiful things in this world are often created by people who see possibilities where others see limitations." 3 months later, Maya and Zara Hassan won America's Got Talent, becoming the youngest winners in the show's history and the first duo to receive unanimous votes in every single round. Their victory performance, an original composition they wrote called "Invisible Light," became the most watched AGT performance of all time, with over 800 million views across all platforms. But the numbers, impressive as they were, didn't tell the real story. The real story was in the thousands of messages they received from blind children around the world who said their performance gave them hope and showed them possibilities they had never imagined. It was in the music schools that began developing programs specifically designed to nurture young blind musicians. It was in the venues that improved their accessibility, not just for audience members, but for performers with disabilities. And it was in the recording contract they signed, not as novelty acts or inspirational stories, but as serious artists whose music transcended any category or limitation. Simon Cowell, true to the moment that had moved him so deeply, became personally involved in launching their recording career. He established a special division of his record label dedicated to supporting young artists with disabilities, ensuring they received the same professional development and marketing support as any other artist. The unanimous Golden Buzzer became a permanent part of AGT, reserved for performances that all 4 judges agree represent something beyond normal competition. Moments of pure artistry that remind everyone why art matters in the first place. Maya and Zara's debut album, Seeing Sound, was released 8 months after their AGT victory. The album cover, shot in black and white, shows the twins at their instruments, their faces tilted upward toward light they cannot see but clearly feel. It debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 and won the Grammy Award for Best Classical Crossover Album. But perhaps the most meaningful recognition came during their first major concert tour. Performing at Carnegie Hall, the same venue where Beethoven's Ode to Joy had premiered in America over a century earlier, Maya and Zara created a moment that connected past and present, classical and contemporary, sight and sound. As they played the same arrangement that had captivated the AGT audience, every seat in the legendary hall was filled. In the audience, Simon Cowell watched with tears in his eyes, remembering the night when 2 blind teenagers had shown him that the most powerful vision comes from the heart. During their final bow, Maya spoke to the audience. "We may not be able to see you, but we can feel your hearts. Music isn't about what you can see, it's about what you can share." Zara added, "And when we play together, we see everything that matters." The lesson Maya and Zara Hassan taught America that night on AGT is simple but profound. The most beautiful music doesn't come from perfect technique or flawless performance. It comes from authentic connection, from the courage to share your deepest truth, and from the understanding that the most powerful communication happens soul to soul. Simon Cowell learned that night that being a judge isn't about finding performers who fit existing categories. It's about recognizing moments when human beings transcend every limitation and show the world new possibilities. And Maya and Zara Hassan proved that sight is just one way of seeing, that connection transcends the physical, and that the most beautiful art comes from places where light shines not through the eyes, but through the spirit. The golden confetti from that unprecedented night has long since been swept away, but the golden moment it represented, when two sisters who had never seen each other's faces created something so beautiful that it made an entire theater see the world differently, that moment continues to inspire, to challenge, and to prove that the greatest performances come not from what we can see, but from what we choose to share. In the end, Maya and Zara Hassan didn't just win a talent competition. They won something much more valuable. They won the understanding that music really is a universal language, that love really does transcend all barriers, and that sometimes the most powerful light comes from those who have learned to shine from within